right. Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time, in response to community requests, we looked at the SocialGuy plugin and the Bootstrap plugin manager, and we fixed a couple of bugs with those two plugins and submitted patches. This time, I'll be catching up on deed tracker bugs and features so a new release can go out. So let's take a look at what's wrong and how we can fix it. As always, I have a rough outline of topics to cover today, but please feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. Pretty much anything is on topic if it has something to do with LOTRO in general or plugins in specific. So let me go ahead and admire the lovely scenery of Bree and switch over to the desktop view. Okay, so what is the deed tracker? Well, right now it's the only plugin I've got installed. In fact, let's go ahead and pull up an Explorer window. In my documents, we've got Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, and right now I've just got my directory, the Cube plugins, and the Turbine files that a few of my features depend on. So sometimes I'll do this just to have kind of a fresh start to my plugin folder. I've just got my day-to-day plugins saved off in another folder. It's, as long as LOTRO isn't running, there's no problem with just moving everything in plugins out and then back in later. Okay, so the deed tracker plugin, if you're not familiar with it, it's a plugin to help you track deeds. So very much what it says on the tin. When you first start it up, there's a button that shows up in the middle of the screen. This is a button that summons the window. However, when you're not hovered over it, it's a little transparent, so some people do have some trouble finding it their very first time. By default, you can just click and drag it to somewhere a little bit more findable. I like to put it down at the bottom of the screen, but since my face is on top of that right now, let me move it over here by the radar. And when you click that button, it makes the main window show and hide. Okay, so the deed tracker is structured very much like the in-game deed log, where each one of these buttons at the top here corresponds to one of these pages in the deed log. So under skirmishes, we have two tabs. Let's make sure my face isn't on top of that. We have the skirmish instances tab and the skirmish lieutenant tab. And similarly, if we go over to the skirmishes button in the deed tracker plugin, we can see one area for skirmish instances and one for skirmish lieutenant. Now, my character does in fact have some of these deeds completed, but as preparation for this stream, I went ahead and just reset the plugin data folder to start from scratch. And that's, again, Lord of the Rings Online in your documents folder, and then plugin data. Okay, so what are some of the things that are wrong going on here that we might look at today? Well, I've compiled a handy dandy list, so we'll go ahead and pull that up. So deed tracker and then to do. So do let me know if that's a little bit hard to read. I'll go ahead and boost the font size up here in the meantime. Now, this is sort of my catch-all file. I call it to do, but really it's things that sound interesting or are actual bugs and should be fixed someday. And at the top here, I've tried to bring a couple of them up, but then there's just page after page after page of, oh, that's an interesting idea, throw it in the pile. And so when I'm looking for ideas of, oh, what could I make better, I do not run out of ideas. There's always more on the list than what I can get to. But if any other plugin developers work with a similar model, then the reason that cool thing that you mentioned maybe hasn't happened yet is A, life gets busy, and B, there may be 73 other also cool things on the list, and sometimes it's just, did someone ask about it recently? Okay, so these are some thoughts I have had recently of things that aren't quite right with the deed tracker. Maybe it's a bug, maybe it's an improvement. And we can maybe walk through those. Now, the first of these is specific to the festival that's going on right now. This is time sensitive, and if I don't fix it in the next week, I can't get another crack at it until next year. Or not without guessing, essentially, and hoping that it's correct. And this has to do with a problem that some quests and deeds are named the same thing. Now, what does that look like? Well, we can actually just go ahead and, from the rooftops of Bree, jump into one of the seasonal instances. So if I bring up the instance finder, when we come to summer, we can see that we have Summer the Perfect Picnic. Awesome. Let's run that at a brisk level 10 and see what the problem is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and travel now. Excellent. So we have 2 new quests in our quest log. We have the Perfect Picnic daily. Need to do it once a day to get those 8 Farmer Fair tokens. Awesome. And we are getting that because, of course, these summer seasonal instances have arrived quest is in our quest log as well. The other one is the Perfect Picnic. Now, this is of some concern to the deed tracker because in skirmishes, unless I've already finished it. Ooh, have I already finished on this character? I have. That will not matter for this example, but that's something to watch out for when you're testing things. The Perfect Picnic deed has the exact same letter for letter name as the Perfect Picnic quest. Right now, there is no Lua interface way to be notified when a quest or a deed completes. But we do get notified in the quest channel. So the quest chat channel is just one of the ones that you can monitor from any of your tabs and is a default for your general tab, I believe. And when you complete a quest or a deed, you get a message saying completed and then the thing that you just completed. Now, why is there only one channel? Why isn't there quest and deed? Well, internally, deeds and quests seem to be very similar mechanistically in the code base. There's not a lot of difference between the idea of a quest and the idea of a deed internally, and I think that shows through here. And in the message, it doesn't say completed quest X or completed deed Y, it just says completed a thing. So if we're trying to figure out, did you complete a deed? Then we look at the text, the Perfect Picnic, and we know there's both a quest and a deed. Now, instances generally have some sort of text that always happens right before you can complete a quest. And so the deed tracker can look out for that specified piece of text and say, oh, aha, I think we're in an instance. And if you then complete the quest, which generally you can't complete the deed anymore at that point, or you don't normally, it can say, oh, well, we saw that we were at the end of the instance, and you just completed the thing. It was a quest. We don't need to ask if you just completed the deed. So what does all this look like? We should get started here. I should talk while we're escorting Penny. Otherwise, we'll never get there. Oops. Now, if you haven't done the Perfect Picnic, it's a lot of fun. Very cute little Shire-oriented instance. We are, of course, dealing with the tragic overabundance of heat. Little Redhead has jumped in chat asking if I want to do duo. In fact, I am almost certainly going to run through all 4 variations with this character in order to test the changes that we're going to do. Yes, we will be doing solo, and then duo, a small fellowship is a second mode, full fellowship is a third, and then raid is the 4th. And I believe you can get 4 different versions of the chest at the end, and I'm hoping we can get the, oh, I'm still using my fishing pole from the festival. I'm hoping we can get the quest to trigger as well. Otherwise, we'll just be switching to a different character. Let's maybe find a sword or something in my inventory. There we go. Now, this is level 10. This is not a concern at all. So, I'm not sure what the chatty hobbits are supposed to do, but Penny seems to just ignore them. Possibly because she doesn't speak common. So once upon a time, I would dutifully talk to each of the chatty hobbits and shoo them away from Penny, but it doesn't. Oh wait, all right, maybe Penny does go a little bit slower. Well, that's okay. We have plenty to do. This heat is troublesome. I know. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. So just like any other instance, I should say skirmish, just like any other skirmish, there is a wrapper deed for each of the encounters. Where Will says, yes, flip them to death with the mighty Levithron. It probably is a mighty Levithron. Let's see what I got. No, it's Rohirric, +8. This is, we're on Evernight right now, so I have a 130 character. Oh yes, I just ran right through it. So that was one of the encounters right there. And so if I had not already completed the perfect picnic on this character, that might very well fill in one of those 8 specific encounters. So the seasonal instances act just like skirmishes in that respect. Rear Willow says, show off. Well, I didn't want to spend a lot of time with the mechanics of the instance. I just literally just need to get to the end of the instance and see what the triggering text is. And so, I'm really just doing it as fast as possible. And so my 130 is probably one-shotting everything. Yeah, like that. In fact, why am I making it hard on myself? My normal play involves having all of my quick slots available, and it feels a little cluttery when I have them up when I'm not actively playing, but here we go. Let's get myself into Dissonance Stance, which is the attacky stance, if you're not familiar with minstrels. Oh, well, that would be a problem with not having someone with me. I have to go pick up all the carrots. I think it would be convenient if I could just store extra ones in one of my crafting carry-alls and just be like, here, Penny, here are 7,000 carrots. Just keep moving. Oh, yes, if you're talking about my fancy fishing pole, then yes, I am definitely showing it off. Who made that? I am not sure. Is that just something you buy? It's bound, but there's no crafting information on there. Maybe you can buy that from someone. Oh, one more carrot. Other side of this huge tree. Now, if you're not familiar with the perfect picnic, we are in the Green Hill country, not far from where Frodo and Sam saw a fox. We thought it very curious to see hobbits walking. Excellent. And we have our 8 carrots. So one of the things I wanted to do on stream perhaps today is talk about debugging and testing and some of the things we have for the D tracker and maybe a way to make this whole skirmish thing a little bit easier to test. Oh, Weirwolf says it's bartered in Snowburn, cannot get it until East Rohan. Yes, this character has made it all the way almost to Minas Tirith. So that's very exciting. We haven't actually fought the defense of Minas Tirith yet, but we have made it into the city. I think we've shoot a bunch of farmers either there or back into the Lebanon area. There's an apparition. Now, this is an interesting variant on skirmishes. I think most skirmishes I've played, if you have an encounter, it's always one of this list. And I think there might be a couple of encounters in here that are just sort of generic, or maybe they're just really common because I see them a lot. And maybe I'm just thinking of things like illusion. So yeah, if you've seen that, let me know in chat. But I feel like, now that I say it, it's probably just you see a few of them over and over and you're just like, oh, that one's not useful. My hover over text doesn't say anything, and maybe it was just the first one I got. But it feels like there's just some generic like heat waves that you see. You know, I haven't, over on Treebeard, I haven't actually tried walking south of Oregon into Enedwaith. I think it would probably just kick me back to my starting area, but I haven't personally tried it. It's certainly what happened over on Bombadil, when we definitely did try that. I should not. Well, the redhead says I should try it with the stout axe. Then I would prefer not to. Although, as long as you've remembered to set some sort of travel skill, it's not too bad. Because I hear the stout axes go back to Mordor, but because they're out of the intro, there's no mechanistic way to get out. You can't just walk out the way you can with any of the other classes. Okay, so we've reached the end of the perfect picnic. Almost. We do need to activate the final encounter, which is bugs, hobbits, and the weather, all of which are well known to disrupt picnics if you let them. Once we've dealt with them, then we can go ahead and look at the quest triggering stuff. Now, I do have my standard chat here, but it might be good to go ahead and get say in there as well, just to be able to track if the mayor maybe says something that coincides with the quest. Okay, so the other thing, if you haven't done this before, you do need to be able to slap hobbits. Now, my keyboard shortcut for selecting the next NPC is Shift F10, like that. And, oh, let's get rid of that dough. That's just gonna be, can I harm? Ugh, stupid wildlife. Okay, so it's Shift F10 to cycle through other things. I'm gonna guess I can't hurt that fox either. Nope, okay. So I like to put my slap button right underneath that. So Shift 0 sounds great. It's currently a firework, but I can go ahead and just toss that. And come on in and get that emote. And I find that useful because then I can just do Shift 10, Shift, oh, sorry, I meant to put that over there. So I can do Shift F10, and then right underneath it is my Shift brace. Shift F10, Shift brace. So I can just cycle between them and do a bunch of slapping. In fact, we'll get some emotes over here as well. And we can see Shift 10, slap, Shift 10, and it's just that fast. And otherwise, clicking on the hobbit and then clicking the slap button just feels like it takes forever. I don't want to lose any food. Okay, enough of that silliness. We're going to come on over here. We're going to go ahead and continue the quest, not let any hungry hobbits, bed bugs, etc. Okay, I did get the too many crisps slow down message, but it's okay because we've sorted all of the hobbits. Oh, we do have some bugs coming in. Now, as a minstrel, as a redline minstrel, I get a bunch of area effect things, so it's quite easy to tag everything. And once you've tagged them, they're going to come after you and not the food. Cool. All right, solo at level 10, super easy. Now, we still haven't completed the quest. The quest says have a picnic on the picnic blanket. So we're not going to get the 42 copper reward of this quest until we eat something. Thank you. Sorry, I was staring at this trying to figure out what was wrong, and I hadn't clicked the banner yet. Haha! Okay, so we can see a couple of things. He says, why look a rainbow? But specifically, we got this text right here. The picnic has been saved. The rain even cooled things down. Now, I had noted this before. I wanted to double check it. So it looks like that's exactly the text that comes through. For many skirmishes or instances, something comes through chat at the same time as a deed complete. So you can just say, that's the text. If the very next thing is you just completed a thing, cool, they were linked, we're good. But some instances, some skirmishes like this are delayed. You get that text and then other things could happen. You could have someone say, woo. And so if you're just looking at chat and saying, okay, that's a thing, and you just remember that last thing that happened, then you might have something between the picnic has been saved and someone eating food. Now, 90% of the time, people eat that food as soon as possible. There's no conversation, but it can happen. Okay, so if I have vegetable stew, then what's likely to happen is the quest should complete. Excellent. And because this is a new plugin data folder, DTracker doesn't know that I've already completed the perfect picnic. So it says, well, you could have just completed the quest or the deed. Which was it? Okay, well, that was the quest. But what we want is for that to not show up if we're at this point. If you see the text, the picnic has been saved, chances are really good no one's now running back to go defeat an encounter. That ship has sailed. I suspect the encounters are still there, but if someone does that, then they can go ahead and they can manually mark the deed complete. We're looking for the main path that people are taking here. So we have the text, and we know that completed the perfect picnic is what's happening. And we can see, I did mark that before. I was doing this over on Treebeard. I did want to make sure that I had copied everything down correctly. Excellent. While you're here, don't forget to get your picnic basket. It will be locked for you until server reset time, it looks like. Excellent. Thank you, Raid Chest. And then you can talk to the mayor and get back to Bree. Awesome. So under the covers, what does it look like? What are we doing? What is going on here? Excellent. Well, DTracker has a file called conflicting quests. So that's a great place to come in. And I'm going to have to shrink this text a little bit because these things are long. Do let me know if it's a little bit too small to read on whatever screen you are using. I know last time we had someone on a tablet, which is very impressive. But in the meantime, we'll just let it take up most of the screen. Okay, so this is a Lua table called conflicting quests. And what does it look like? Well, internally, and this is a thing that I suspect a lot of plugin developers will say, is that by the time they're done with a plugin, they would have done things way differently if they could go back and do it again. If they could rewind the clock, they would take all those lessons they learned and do things differently. And that, I feel like that's true for me. And so one of the things, if you ever browse through plugin files, and you can, they're just sitting there in your plugins folder, there's nothing stopping you. The deed info file maps the structure, the in-game deed log, matches the in-game deed log structure. So if we take a look, we can see that there's a thing called deed log page tabs. But before that, there's a deed log pages. Now, I don't think there's any in-game terminology to distinguish what these blue buttons are up here versus what these arrow things down here are. There may be internally, I'm sure they know what they would call those. So I came up with these things at the top are pages, and we can see skirmish, instances, hobbies, the war. And then these things at the bottom, I go ahead and call those tabs, page tabs. And so there's pages, there's page tabs, and then there's the page tab contents. What is on a page? So if I come here to Eriador, and I look at that first tab of Breland, then we can see, oh, I guess the first one is skirmishes. Cool, that's what we're working with. So skirmishes, skirmish instances, and then underneath that is this structure. And we can see that this is a nested table. So if I go ahead and say, let's collapse those skirmish instances and skirmish lieutenants, we can see that the table indexes match the page and page tab structure. So in the first page, in the first tab, there are these things. if I were doing it differently, I might come up with a better or maybe a more elegant solution. But, whoa, oh no. I think I have placed that button too close to the radar. Under the covers, windows are squares or rectangles, really. And so the radar can obscure you from clicking on something that looks like it's not it looks like it's not touching the radar, but it's still underneath the radar's box. And in fact, you can see the radar's box is this big honking thing right there. So if you put something inside that box, your clicks will probably go to the radar instead because it is more important. All right, so what do we have here? If we look at that skirmish instances, we can see the same thing going on in our file. We can see, let's see, tutorial, fences of encounters, smoke before fire, skirmisher of Middle Earth, and then a thing that doesn't exist in the deed log, but a way to divide things up conceptually. Because one of the reasons I wanted to make the deed tracker was a more hierarchical organization of deeds. If you look in the deed tracker, it sorts them by type, and then it sorts them alphabetically, and that's it. And most of the time, that just doesn't work for my head. I want to know how are things by level. Like if you're level 20, then you just don't need to worry about Standard Amansul yet. It's not available. Or if you're looking at the Shire, you know, the deeds of the Shire depends on you completing Explorer of the Shire and Life of Bounder and Slayer of the Shire. Explorer requires you to do the farms of the Shire and the sites of the Shire. You know, this hierarchical nesting system is pretty extensively used throughout the deed log in game, but only in the sense that the deeds combine. Now there is the set rewards button, which maybe can do things a little bit differently. I don't play around with that very often. Let's see. I'm going to say that's still not a useful view for me, although it might be very cool. But yeah, by default, we have all the Slayer deeds are together, and then it's just alphabetical. Barhest, Barhest Advanced. Breland Woodsman, Breland Woodsman Advanced. And so that was the big thing for me, is I wanted to have all the deeds, whether or not you've started them, in a more sensible ordering for the way I was thinking about them. And so that's what we're seeing here. Okay, so the deeds are, information about the deeds is stored in this nested table structure. So first the page, and then the tab, and then an entry for each one. To future-proof how this works, there's also a save index. So you can move these things around within a tab, and it will remember how to save the information. And at the time, this was a solution to the problem. As it turns out, we as a community have some access to some of the internal data from the game. And there are distinct IDs that the game uses to track every quest, every deed. And so instead of using this nested structure, especially for the save file, I could have just used this index and been like, hey, it's done or it's not done. And that would have saved me some efforts. One of these days, I'll probably go back and try to fix that. But in the meantime, this conflicting quest has the same structure: the page, the tab, and then the save index of the deed in question. Okay, and so for each one of these, we have a couple of things. Is the quest repeatable? Now, for skirmishes, the answer is always yeah. You can come back maybe every time you go in, but definitely every day you can go back in and do the quest again. For some conflicting quests, it's not repeatable. So for instance, there is Eyes of the Enemy, which is both a quest in the Trollshaws to defeat 6 Hendervale, and a deed in the Mines of Moria. I think it's in Filgashan, maybe? Let's see, instances. Mines of Moria. Eyes of the Enemy. There we go. Filgashan. Yeah. And so if you finish something called Eyes of the Enemy, you're either doing something in the Trollshaws or you're doing something in Filgashan. That's fun. But the quest Oh yeah, the quest is also repeatable. Let's see, leave no one behind. There is a interesting. There's apparently a non-repeatable quest uh, that also interferes with this Tower of Dol Guldur deed. Oh, hey, it is close to my head. Cool. So leave no one behind is in Tower of Dol Guldur, but it's also a Minas Morgul quest non-repeatable. So if it's not repeatable and the user says we've done the quest, then we can assume that any future time that we get leave no one behind, that it's the deed. Hello, Mao2099. And hello, Greg's in chat. Excellent question. Am I a LOTRO dev? Absolutely not. I do not work for Standing Stone Games, and I do not work on the game. But I am a big fan of LOTRO and LOTRO plugins, and I have done some plugin development work. The plugin we're looking at today, the Deed Tracker, is a supplementary plugin that works hand in hand with the in-game deed log. It's not meant to be a replacement, but it does help maybe for a completionist perspective, know how much you've done. So for instance, if I was had just finished up the deeds of the Shire, then in this little compact view, you can see, hooray, I've done everything in the Shire. Now it's time to move on to Ered Luin or whatnot. Then it'll also tell me, oh, I can get 300 LOTRO points and 90,000 virtue experience from going to Breland, or 185 and 38k from Ered Luin, etc. And so the Deed Tracker is a fun plugin, and today we're just looking at making some improvements to it and also explaining some of its peculiarities as it turns out. So one of the things we're looking at is the, what is it? The perfect picnic. Now, I knew that this was an issue at some point, and so I started to fill in the details. Obviously, the details aren't quite right, though, because it did ask me, is this the quest or the deed? So something needs to be fixed. Okay. Well, that's funny. I don't think I'm using that quest name properly. A thing I'll do is sometimes copy paste, and that's not great. Okay, yeah, it's not terrible. Okay, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at entry for number 22. We've said it's repeatable. That is true. We've identified what name will pop up when asking, hey, which one is this? And the announce text is the text the game uses to say, you've completed the thing. For instance, we saw, where was it? The picnic has been saved. The rain even cooled things down. Cool. We saw that. And we know it's delayed. But something's not working here. And that's what we're going to play around with. Now, I mentioned before that when you're developing a plugin, it's useful to have some ways to debug what's going on, to test what's going on without having to do the thing. For a deed tracker, for instance, having to complete a deed is a non-trivial amount of work. Well, sometimes it's pretty fast. But if I had to complete a deed every time I wanted to test something, that would be really challenging. So if you build in debugging capability, as I have at the bottom of the options window here, I can just say, act as if you have just seen the completion of Places of the Dwarves. And complete. Cool. So starting right after the code that checks the chat for that kind of message, we have just executed all of the rest of the steps in the code for, is this a deed? Okay, have you already done it? No? Okay, all of that. So for instance, if I were to go ahead and say complete again, the code will know, oh, you've already completed that, no problem. In fact, if I turn on verbose logging and run the completion button, cool. We can see it said, didn't find a deed matching that. It should really say, didn't find an uncompleted deed matching that. In fact, let's go fix that while we're doing this. Now, I don't know where that is off the top of my head. It's definitely not going to have that text in there. So let's go ahead and do a search for did not find deed matching and just see what we can find in our directory. Okay, cool. Did not find an uncompleted deed matching that. Awesome. Now, that's a lot of the times it just means you just finished a quest, not a deed. But in this case, it means, let's reload that. It means we've already done it. All right, so well, that's exciting. Lord of the Rings, what are you doing? Okay. So we go ahead and complete. Good, cool. Did not find an uncompleted deed matching that. Cool, we've already made an improvement. In fact, I'm a big fan of source control, as you've probably seen me saying on previous streams. So let's go ahead and just mark that as better output message. Done. We won't have to worry about that again. Okay, so that's an example of a debug, a testing ability. Now you can see a couple other things here. I can trick the plugin into thinking I've moved to a different region, or I've leveled up, or I can just reload the plugin, which is normally not an option that's available. Not because it's particularly bad, it's just normally not needed. And so it's one less entry in the plugin manager list here if you don't have that. Okay. So, oh, that wasn't the right window. I'm sorry about that. Cool. So one thing I would like to do is actually look at including the ability to simulate what we just saw. Because as we saw, even at level 130, running through a level 10 instance, it still took a while to get to the end. And I don't want to have to do that each time I make a change and test, did it work? Make a change, test. I want to have some confidence that the next time I run the perfect picnic, it'll work. So, how do we do that? Well, for this plugin, there is an options. Let's see, options. And this is where each of the things, well, I have too many windows there. Each of the entries in the options window here is managed by this create options content function. So this is a place to add something else. Now, for the most part, these are going to be pretty obvious. Legendary server cap, server cap. Is it a difficulty? Like, naming your variables will hopefully help you understand what the UI is doing. Now, after verbose, we can see if show debug options. If this flag is set, then go ahead and do things. And we can see that I even have some other stuff in here that maybe I shouldn't have shipped. Whoops. In fact, none of that should have shipped. What am I doing? That's okay. So we want to go ahead and add a new field for triggering what's the word? Conflicting quest announcement text. And then once we've done that, we can use the standard, you just finished something, maybe it was a deed or maybe it was a quest button. So we only need one new thing. Okay, what's this look like? Well, I have a helper function here, add debug field. So we'll just pretend like that's going to do what we want it to do. Looks like everything takes the options. That's probably the name of the window that we're making options. Yeah, that's the control that we're passing to LOTRO that say put this in the options window. Cool. Y is just how far down on the page it is. The function returns how tall the thing is we just made, so we can just go sip, 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 sip. The name of the button. Now, I don't have 100% localization, but for debug stuff, I don't bother to localize it at all because I'm usually the only one who sees it. Maybe some beta testers, they'll see it too. Okay, so we have announcement. And what's this final thing? Well, this final thing is where the magic happens. This is the name of a function, usually. And so if I look up here, we can see, oh, yeah, that's a function. It does the thing that we want to do when the button is pushed. So if we say function debug announce, debug, yeah, announce text, then we can go ahead and say there's a function called debug that just spits something out to the standard. And we'll just say, we're here, exclamation. And that will tell us the button is working before we try to do anything more complicated. Debug, announce text, and we're good. So hopefully, if I hit reload plugin, everything works fine. Now, the one thing that bothers me as a plugin developer is that it stops looking at the options page, but there's a little button here in the D tracker that puts you back there. Okay, we can see it says announcement. Button's not wide enough, but that's fine. And then instead of hitting the text field, I just hit the reload plugin button again. Excellent. So if I type in text and hit announce, we can see the text, we're here. Great. Everything is working. Oh, hey. Moobot says cool things. Thanks, Little Redhead. Little Redhead's very good at the chat commands, and I kind of forget that they are a thing, so I appreciate that you're jumping in there. Okay, so we can see we've added a field just for debug purposes, and we can see that it works. Awesome. So now we need it to do something more useful. So to do this, we kind of need to know what's going on with the conflicting quest. Like, how does it know where this text is happening? That's an exciting noise coming from the hallway. Okay, so knowing that we need to be checking for the delayed text, we're probably looking for something like this. Just to satisfy our curiosity, though, there is a function called chat logger, and this is where every message that comes through to your client, we can peek at that and see what's going on. And so specifically, we are looking for, in this chat log received, let's see, we can know what the message was and what channel it went into. And this is the important thing. So standard channel is where we can see the player moving from one region to another. And that can be useful because if you are in Arid Luin and we know that you're in Arid Luin, then if you complete a deed, you must be in Arid Luin. So it must be an Arid Luin deed. And so that's a useful piece of information to know. Where are you? And we can see that if it's Quest chat, oh, and that's why it's not working. Oh, that's so good. Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we only monitor the Quest channel for quest completion text. Like, you've successfully defeated the Balrog. Usually that will show up in quest text. So one of those examples that we can see here is the half-orc leading the assault has fallen. The remaining brigands and goblins are scattering. Their great smiles are safe. Good job. Way to complete trouble in Tuckborough. So that would come in under the quest channel. Now, as it turns out, it's probably the case that the text that we're looking at, which was the picnic has been saved, the rain has even cooled things down, that probably came in under say, maybe. Maybe? Maybe not. So that could be a question is, because this was a special instance, did that come in under a channel that we're not looking at? But if it did, then what else? Oh, I wish I had the debugging on that first time I ran through, but that's okay. So what we're really looking at is, if it's that, what's filter quest do? Check if it says completed. Oh, okay. So we're checking to see if that's the announcement of a completed quest or a deed. We're saving off the thing that happened before this. Oh, no, this is the last thing that happened. And then we're going to check to see if this is a delayed message, indicating that we basically hit the end, but not really. Okay, so that's actually excellent because we can just hijack that mechanism, come back into the options window, and in that debug function, we're just going to say, yeah, check for delayed text. Perfect. So what does that do for us? Well, first we reload the plugin because otherwise we don't get that code that we just wrote. And then we go ahead and copy paste. The picnic has been saved. The rain even cooled things down. Thanks, rain. Announce. Oh, cool. Okay. Well, found delayed skirmish completion text 1. Well, that seems suspiciously not what I was expecting. Let me check something else. Let me check a different one that has worked in the past. So like thievery and mischief. You've reclaimed town hall. Really? Just town hall? And freed the south of Bree. All right. So, I did not copy it right. Okay. So, cool, you've reclaimed, announce. Interesting. Well, I'll be excited to learn if everything is broken. So this could be an example of not enough debug text. Let's go look at the quest that we're calling here, which was check for delayed text and see. Do we debug anything? We debug that we found it, but we don't talk about anything else. So if we wanted to, especially for testing, debug checking for delayed text. And we can go ahead and surround that with quotes just so it's very easy to pick out the beginning and end. So that's the thing we can do. And that'll at least tell us that, yeah, that we're in the right place. All right, announce. Okay, checking for delayed text. Awesome. And then, oh, that's probably it. I didn't find one that was delayed. Okay. Well, that's good. Everything is working the way it should be. So let's take a look at one that we think. Okay, found delayed skirmish completion text 1. Okay, what are we actually trying to spit out here? Because I don't feel like 1 is a thing here. Okay, well, the real question is, what are we looking for? Where does delayed skirmish completion chat show up? Okay. So it gets cleared in chat logger when, when we change the location, you've left a skirmish or something. That prevents you from completing one skirmish and then going into another one and thinking you're already done. Okay, that sounds reasonable. If it's not null, well, hang on a second. Kind of feels like that should be setting it to nil then, huh? Okay. What else? If it's not nil, that equals string.find. Okay. So that, we are setting it to that each time we look. Okay. And then, so if it's that and not null, found it. And then, cool, we should probably set that to null here also. I keep saying null, it's N-U-L-L in a lot of languages, it's N-I-L here. Don't get caught up like that. If you type null, it will not work. Okay, let's just do a little reload. Nope, do want that verbose logger. We're going to go ahead and reload the plugin here. And just make sure that we're still seeing consistency. Great. We're still seeing found 1. So what I think is happening is the string.find function is returning the number of matches. So if this was different, if this was just no match, what would we see? Neat. Okay. Looks like it must be equal to nil because we're not getting anything. Awesome. Now, this is a Lua function. It's not a Lord of the Rings LOTRO function. And so one of the things we can do is just go to the internet and search for Lua string.find and see what is it supposed to be doing. Make sure that we're getting the same thing. And let's see, string.find. The function returns the position where it finds the pattern, or nil if it could not find it. Perfect. That is what we want. So that's what we're seeing is the position, it's finding it at position 1. That makes sense. Awesome. So the real question is, what is the text that we need? We've seen the picnic has been saved, the rain even cooled things down. Great. I wonder if the exclamation point's the problem. No, okay, I found the text. And then the perfect picnic. Complete. Oh, well, it works here in test. That's good. Fascinating. Any reason why it wouldn't work when we go test it? Be ashamed to do it again. Okay, so we saw in text, don't let the rain ruin the picnic has been saved, the rain event cooled things down. Cool. So is there anything that would cause this conflicting delayed skirmish completion chat? Where does that get set? Because if that gets cleared out in some way, that would be a problem. So nil when we are changing channels, not a problem. Checking for nil, setting it, checking, using it, and at the very beginning. Okay, so it's only being changed here when we call check for delayed text. Good. Where does that happen? Oh, yes, cool. Okay, check for delayed text. We're doing it in the debug. This is the actual function. This is the only place it's being called. Cool. So if yarg is quest chat. Well, that's an interesting question. So as long as nothing else that comes through is also something that we will find in one of these announcements, then I think we're probably okay. Okay, well, I would like to go through and see what that is again. So if there were someone over on this server, I could even do a duo. Neat. Hello, Tide Heist. All right, we're going to do this really easy, though. Okay, new quest, the perfect picnic. Let's get on with it.
How do you do?
Okay, so we can see that as quest text is coming through, that we are checking to see if that indicates that we have finished the quest. So we can see gathered picnic supplies. That's not a thing. Awesome. So we're getting some useful debug text here. That's great. I just left Tide Haste behind to handle everything. Hey. There we go. I think I'll just enjoy a meal while she catches up. Okay. So if you're not familiar with it, the first of the encounters, I did bypass it last time, but it is inside the little town of Woodall here. Unbearable heat. All right. Skirmish. Completed. Perfect picnic. Unbearable heat. Yes, okay, I wasn't just hallucinating. Sometimes you will just get unbearable heat. It is not one of the 8 named ones, unless I'm missing something. And so there are 4 encounter locations, but I think in general you're not going to get a named encounter at all of them. Sometimes it'll just be unbearable heat. don't know if it's my computer or the heat, but I'm getting a little bit of a rubber banding here. Okay, so, oops, pardon me as I thump my microphone. So, across the hill here, where you will go up to find bandits if you're on landscape, there's a second one. So while Tide Haste is shepherding Penny, we'll go ahead and see. That's an aberration. That's a named one. Now, you might ask, why are the deed objectives not in alphabetical order? And that's a question one could ask, although, of course, the question would be which alphabet? Or would they be in a different order for each language? Okay, it looks like Tad Haste has... Oh, that's funny. Was Penny waylaid? That's okay. Penny's reached the stream. Awesome. Oh, so do the chatty hobbits just not do anything on solo, but they do things on higher, maybe? Ah, that would make sense. Because certainly when you're clearing the clover up ahead, on solo mode, you just clear it, but on higher level difficulty, like in fellowship mode, more heat mirage monsters will pop out when you clear the clover. And so there can be some more nasty surprises when you do this as a 6 or 12 person instance, if you're really used to running it as a solo. All right. Cool, and we can see we're still getting those debug messages about checking for delayed text. Everything is running good there. And Penny is coming up along. All right, the third encounter location is just over here on the way to what's the old leaf farm? Yeah, old Odo's leaf farm. But the encounter doesn't appear until after Penny is released. Just like that. Which does make me wonder if you finish the instance, do any remaining encounters despawn? I haven't tried that out. Maybe we'll do that this time. Aha, I got there first. Penny will definitely stop to munch on the clover patches if you leave them. And I haven't ever had the patience, but if you leave all of them, she may just munch at one, munch on the next, munch on the next. There may be no real end to it until she's eaten through every clover patch, which there's no specific time limit in the skirmish, but I don't have the patience, I'm afraid. Got other things to do. Gotta go bet on some dwarves and hobbits. Oh no, she reached it. So she's gonna pause here and keep munching. That's fine. We're going to leave the encounter to the left, or maybe just visually confirm it's there. Ugh. What ho! So we're going to visually see that the encounter is there. We can see it on the map here, and it's Pincher, straight out of the Scumfil in Moria. Oh. You got to be careful walking around the base of this hill because I think it's a geo barrier, and so you can walk through several parts of it. Excellent. Tadchis has cleaned up the hill while I struggle with the heat. Okay, so ideally, we're going to be seeing that quest text come through, and those debug statements telling us that the plugin is seeing them correctly. Penny? There she comes. Were you saying that you can get a penny as a cosmetic pet? Wow, that's cool. Does she shimmer in the haze? I mean, just look at all the things she's carrying. She's a good sport. She's got a loot. I mean, what self-respecting hobbit does not bring a loot to the picnic? I mean, pretty sure I've got loot. Yeah. Okay, so same basic thing going on here. So I'm just alternating through the various targets and hitting slap. I'm getting too many requests though, so I should probably be a little bit more sparing with that until the hobbits are a little bit closer. Oh well. Okay, we lost some food. Now it's time for the weather. What ho? Now this is a downside of not doing it on level, is you don't get the little red dots in the radar. Hello, just a horse. Ah, Argaled says, I take it those are Dutch names. Yes, those are. We are living in the Netherlands, and we figured why not celebrate that by a daily reminder, and hopefully it helps us learn a new word. Okay, so Tijdgeest is very nicely left the banner to me. So I'm going to click on the banner, and we're going to see what comes through the chat channel. Okay, the picnic has been saved. Awesome. Found the delayed skirmish text. That's exactly what we wanted to see. So now the question is it going to trigger correctly? And if so, what changed? Because I don't think I actually changed anything. So I'm going to go, oh, cool. Those look like blueberries. I'm going to have some of those. Ah, Tijdgeest has a picnic seed that looks suspiciously familiar. Okay, so excellent. We have some text here. So we had, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and chat log. I'm going to go ahead and capture that chat just for reference. And if you do that, you're going to get a file in your Documents Lord of the Rings Online folder. In this case, it'll be the name of the tab. So that tab is called Standard. Everything that was in that tab should be dumped out here. Awesome. So unfortunately, they only dumped out in plain text, so you don't retain any of the color information, but it's good for reference. So we can see we got what we're looking for, found delayed skirmish text. So the plugin should think that there's a possible delayed quest here. Now, the delicious, delightful perfection, that's good to know that that's okay. So we could potentially key off of that as well. And then finally, the checking announcement of conflicting quest. Vanapi says, are you a Dutchie? Tijdloos is a Dutch word, Nederlandstalig. And the answer is we are living here, but we're still very much beginners at the language. Wij spreken een beetje Nederlands. And so, yeah, seeing the word tijdloos, seeing the word tijdgeest, these are nice, hopefully get us learning just a little bit more each day. Yeah. This text right here, okay, this is telling us something about that checking announcements. Let's go take a look at that. So, checking announcement. And this is where we already have some pre-existing debug text. So it's telling us is announced was, where'd it go? There's more text coming in, scrolling me down. All right, it says announced was false and delayed was false. Well, that's weird. Where are those coming from? Is announced. Oh, okay. And is delayed. Okay, so we have, was there this function is being called. Let's see, function is declared there, and in two places, the disambiguate window and a function which is called if deed mark complete, which is it's part of the core part of the plugin. So we do see completed something is both a deed and a quest asking user to choose. And that's the quest that's what's happening right there. And so when it said, was there an announcement of conflicting quest, this is not returning correctly. So this is where we are. Okay, well, that's not very helpful, but it's something. So we have I, J, save, index. Now, what it really would have been nice to know is what are those? Debug. So we're going to go ahead and spit those out. So we'll do a quick little string.format. And that's a number, that's a number, that's a number, and we'll go ahead and I, J, save, index. Okay, so we are going to need to reload the plugin. That's okay. It wasn't doing the right thing anyway. But we can go ahead and get us back to where we were, maybe. So we know that happened. Then we know this happened. Oops. So we announce that. And then finally, we have completed the perfect picnic. So we can go ahead and trigger that. Okay, awesome. So, what's going on here? Ah, there's text happening. Ah, thank you, Little Red Hood, for jumping in there. Oh, should he get the chest? I mean, if you want to be out of here, it's fine. The chest doesn't matter. Awesome, thank you. So, we have now gotten 2 of the picnic baskets that are available. There are 4 each day. But what's good is we're able to trigger what's going on here. And so this delicious, delightful perfection, oops, might very well be the problem. Did I just delete that? I just deleted that. It's fine. So we'll go ahead and copy it from here. And we're going to go ahead and make a note here. So that, and then that, and then the quest completion. So something in getting 2 of those in a row maybe is causing us problems. Let's take a look. Oh no, typeface is left. Oh well. So we know we're in, was there an announcement of conflicting quest? And we know we're getting the indices now 1, 1, 22. That's great because we know we're in 1, 1 here. And if we were to go ahead and maybe collapse down a few of these. Excellent. So we can see 22 is correct here. So we're getting the right indices. There's nothing wrong there. The function is being called correctly. But what are we then doing with that? All right, we're going to go ahead and shrink some more of these down because they're not involved. So does this have the conflicting? So first of all, we get the, does this exist? Now, the answer should be yes. But we could always double check that. Oh, sorry, wrong function. We're in was there that. So does that exist? So we can actually just add a debug string form. Well, no. Quest exists, and then the value of quest exists, or you could call toString on it. Okay, so we're back in here. We can go ahead and oops, run through those texts that we saw here. So the first one, announce that. The second one, delicious, delightful, perfection. Awesome, and then we can announce this. Okay, so we can see Quest exists. Awesome, we're making progress. So that's definitely going to be true. We're definitely going to be getting into this code. Okay. So the next thing is the announce text, where there's two things. If the announce text is always immediately preceding the quest because it's part of the quest completion, then that's handled by this branch. Because you should see the quest is finishing text and then quest complete blah, or completed blah. But if the thing is delayed and that thing is not null, then we should be setting is delayed equal to that. So this is actually a good place to have real debug output. So I'm copying way too much there. So if debug output, then we would go ahead and say deed. We'll do another stringed out format because we want some stuff in here. All right, so deed I, j, save index is delayed. Neat. And then what else do we care about? Yeah, let's maybe get that as well. Oh, what is that? Oh, I've been kicked out of the instance. That's hilarious. Maybe. Maybe I went AFK. Oh, Thaudan says, interesting plugin. Haven't done much coding regarding LOTRO plugins, just WoW add-ons. So there's a comment in chat that we could move this check for settings verbose into the debug output. Now the debug is a poorly named function, and that is partly because the deed tracker plugin actually grew out of a different plugin for managing the rebuilding of Hidbold. And in that one, they had a function called debug that wrote text to the chat channel in a color. And I just got lazy and just kept using that. And it would have been better if I had made a different one called like output. And then you're absolutely right. If I had done that, then we could have a function called debug that explicitly does this check as well. In fact, that's such a good idea. I want to put it into the list of things to do. So rename debug to output. Create new debug that does the check for, because you're absolutely right, that would make it a lot cleaner. And clean code is easier to read code. I like it. Now, you've done WoW plugins. That's awesome. My understanding is they're Lua as well. The LOTRO Lua landscape is a little bit more constrained in what you can do. So, for instance, your plugin can't respond to keyboard clicks. It has to be a mouse interaction. And I'm sure there's other restrictions, some of which World of Warcraft may have, some of which not. Okay. Thaudan says, did you try to use GitLab/GitHub? It's a good habit of using that issue system. I do actually, behind the scenes, and we even show it sometimes here, do have a GitHub backed Git repository that I'll use for snapshotting. I don't use it for issue tracking at the moment. I could, but at the moment it's a little bit easier to manage in just a text file like this. But absolutely, there's a more robust ecosystem for this kind of thing available. Let me go ahead and take that. Awesome. Well, I love that suggestion. Thank you. In the meantime, I'm not quite ready to take on that task in the middle of this one, but oh, it looks like you've been squelched, but I can still see it. So no worries, I'll go take a look at that later. You know, it's funny, Moobot says ask permission, and I'm not actually sure how to tell Moobot to give you permission, but that's okay. Oops. Okay, it looks like you may have been linking to, Sublime Text GitLab Manager. Neat. Well, thank you for that link. So, the link that got published. So for anyone who's curious, it looks like a pretty safe link to follow. It just goes to github.com/tosher/stgitlab. Cool. I'll save that for later. Thank you. Okay. So, yes, deed is delayed. And I did want to know what that value was, but I, off the top of my head, don't know how to do a string format that might have a null value coming into it. So, oh, well, it can't be null. Never mind. We've already checked for that. Excellent. J, save index. And then finally, that value itself. Because I want to know what's going on there. Okay. So, all that being said, I think we're narrowing down on what the flaw is. Okay. So, the picnic has been saved. You know what? If I remove those spaces, I can just triple click that line and all is good. Okay, so we've announced that. Excellent. Found the text. Everything's good. And announce. It's checking. Now I suppose we could double check the checking line there. Checking for delayed text. Any chance it's messing things up? Oh, you know, that might be it right there, actually. Each time we're checking for that message, the announced text is that. We're assigning directly there. We're overwriting that previous thing. That's what it is. Because we're seeing multiple Quest chats come in, we can either fix this by fixing the bug here or just by using the last Quest thing that comes in. I think we'll fix the bug here. That makes for a little bit more robust solution. Okay, so we need an intermediate variable. So if x, we'll call it, is not equal to nil, then we can go ahead and set this. And what is x? Well, local find a result equals that. And then the value of this just has to be not null. It's fine for it to be find result. We're just checking to see, was there something? In fact, it could be a Boolean, but it's already null or not null all over. So we'll just leave that for right now. And that might actually be enough to solve this quandary where it was working in isolation but not in the actual instance. Okay, so we've got the picnic has been saved, the rain even cooled things down. Cool. Found it, great. And then delicious, delightful, perfection. Awesome, we've announced it. Oh, that's not what I was hoping to see. Right, okay. So that debug should probably be in there also, otherwise it's going to be very confusing. All right, we'll restart the final test. Now, a downside about a plugin that knows about every more or less deed in the game is it can take a few seconds to load. I have ideas about that, but nothing solid. Okay, and then, cool, we found delayed, we checked, we didn't find it, and then complete. Awesome. So we are seeing the squelching that we were looking for. Now, we haven't seen it in situ, but we've just replayed each of the Quest chats that came through on our last run through, and everything looks good. So anything that we could do if we really wanted to be sure about this is to just pop open the 6-person instance or the 12-person, run that on level 10. But I'm actually really happy with this because we found a bug. The bug was definitely responsible for this problem, and I am confident I'm going to be running the perfect picnic at least a couple more times over the next couple of days because we don't have enough festivity tokens for everything quite yet. So I think I would leave off that final run through and just move on to the, let's start removing all of that extra debugging text that we have in there now that we see it's working. So like I was saying before, I use Fork as my graphical user interface for my Git source control repository. Now, there are a bunch of different source control repositories. If Weirwood is still in the channel, I think they were mentioning that that's a little bit beyond where they are at. And so, yeah, definitely, if you are new to plugin development, you don't have to use source control. Source control is very useful, but it's an extra level of what's going on here. Like the old tried and true method of just copying off your plugin directory every once in a while when something's working and just be like, this thing works, rename it, and then you just go and edit. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just not as good as it could be. Okay, so we can take a look at what's changed. So first of all, we have the debug announced text. Do we want to keep that? I'm not opposed to that because that was really useful. So I'm going to go ahead and stage that and just take a snapshot of that change where we can say added Quest announcement debug capability. Cool. Super simple. That's the only change in that little snapshot. Great. What else do we have? Well, we have where we were fixing, where sometimes it was set to blank and sometimes it was set to nil. That's definitely a thing we want to keep in there. Okay. This window is just not big enough for the both of us. Okay, we'll do it inline here. What else do we have? There's a lot of stuff. Okay, here's another one of those nil changes. Awesome. I should probably update my to-do file. Okay, fix this. Awesome. And then, as always, we're going to go ahead and mark something in the README file. So, bugs, fixed, auto quest detection for the perfect picnic. Great. So we can go ahead and include those in the snapshot here. And anything else that's changed, we don't need to worry about that right now, although that is excellent. Let's see. Looks like that debug, both of those are no longer needed. So we can go ahead and discard those changes. Don't need them. This one I did want to keep, but we're not ready for that yet. This debug, I do not need it. Awesome. And then the rest of that is part of the fix. Let's see. Oh, you're right. We did forget to check that little redhead. Oh, well. And that one says, learn the habit of doing version control early. You learn to do cleaner development practices. You save yourself time in the long run. I think that's good advice for someone who's going to be doing a lot of development. It's one of those things, if you can learn a practice that takes you an hour to learn and it will save you 5 seconds every time you do the thing, but you're only going to do the thing 10 times, was that a good trade-off? Versus you're going to be doing this for the next 30 years. So for me, learning source control years and years ago was very useful because I do this as part of my day job. I also do coding and use source control. And so there was a lot of benefit from doing that. If I was just doing this as a hobby and was occasionally doing a plugin development, I think it would still be worth learning as a skill and as a concept because it applies not just to code. You can use source control to control other things like website pages or whatever. But you do have to trade that off. If you only have so much time per week, you do kind of have to make that choice of well, if it only takes me 10 minutes to manage this stuff and I only have an hour, then that kind of thing. So source control is great asterisk, right? Like I can't unequivocally say you must learn this thing, but I think it's well worth learning, if only for the same reason I think, algebra and geometry, these are things that are worth learning even if you don't use them in your day job, because the way they change your brain, I think, is only to the good. So anyway, that side note is done. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, that's not right. So we're gonna go ahead and separate these out. So these things, fixed resetting a variable to nil instead of blank. Awesome. Little snapshot there. And then we've got the README changes, we've got the to-do file changes, only that one. And then we've got the fix here of the announcement and is delayed, stage. And then we've got the actual bug fix for the function here is a separate thing though. So we're going to go ahead and say fix auto-completing quest detection for perfect picnic. No, added the perfect picnic details. And here's what we're going to say, we're going to go ahead and stage that and stage everything here. That all looks great. Now, if I was concerned and wanted to see a slightly better comparison, I do have Beyond Compare that I am quite fond of, and it sometimes does a better job of figuring out, oh, these are the exact same file except for it's indented differently. And it's a little bit more clear what's changed. And some more conversation about source control. And actually, there's some really good points in there. Sometimes I will be working on a plugin, and I'm in the middle of something, I've almost got it working, and then life happens, and I come back 3 weeks later, and I have that, where was I, moment where I just can't remember. And if you're using source control, then the only things that are different from your last snapshot are kind of by definition what you were working on. Right? So if I went away for a month and I came back and I looked at this, it would be much easier for me to say, that's what I was working on, without needing extensive notes as well. Now, I might wonder, is it working? Is there a reason I didn't already commit this? Is there a reason I left it in the middle of things? That's another thing. But usually just the act of jogging my memory by seeing it in this uncommitted state, I can be like, oh, okay, I remember all the rest of that. Okay, so we broke this out into 2 parts. We save off the result, and if the result is good, we go ahead and use it and announce. All that looks great, so we're going to go ahead and take that. Awesome. That's what causes the debug stuff to show up, so we don't need that, and we'll come back to that to do. Awesome. So fixed bug that caused duplicate quest text to unset the is delayed check. Something like that. I don't know. It's enough words that I'll probably remember what that was about. And then finally, idea from chat. Don't call all output debug. Excellent. Love it. Okay. And then one of the key things for me of source control is getting it off of my machine, because my machine could die tomorrow. But in the cloud, where machines are constantly dying and being replaced behind the scenes, it's a little bit safer. And in fact, it's in both places now. It's on my machine and it's off on GitHub's servers. So I've got a little bit of redundancy there. I don't have to worry about my machine dying and taking it with it. Okay, so that's awesome. We added a new debug feature for those delayed things, which is actually, I don't know why it took me so long, because I have run through so many skirmishes trying to figure out, okay, is this triggering correctly? And this would have been great. So, I mean, there's nothing like doing it for real, but being able to simulate getting text in is invaluable when your plugin is looking at text like that. There's another plugin that I want to work on that will show an on-screen timer for when a hunter decoy is out, counting down when it's going to explode, because it explodes after 15 seconds. And it's going to be looking at combat text to see, did you put it out and did it die because things were beating on it, stuff like that. So did it prematurely go away before it could explode? And being able to simulate seeing stuff in the chat log is going to be really useful for that as well, because you can only put it out every 30 seconds or something. So being able to test your code once every 30 seconds isn't always optimal. Okay, so that's real progress. That's awesome. Thanks for coming along with me on that. What else is in this to-do item? And does anyone have kind of preferences? This was just sort of a list of things. Whoops, don't mean to move that around. And some of them are easier than others. So we can go ahead and space them out a little bit here just to make them a little bit easier to read, maybe if you have a smaller screen. Let's see. I'm going to get a drink here while I glance at what those are. Okay, well, some of these are almost trivial. Like that first one in there is pretty trivial. So while any comments come in, one of the things that's really interesting is how the community is still catching up, the LOTRO community in general, and especially the wiki editors, are still catching up with legendary server content. So, not too recently, let me bring over a browser, LOTRO wiki legendary server. Oh, thank you. I have more water. So there's a legendary server page on the wiki. And one of the things I am, of course, interested in is the deeds that you can get on the legendary server. So there's a table here that kind of breaks them up into, does it just happen as you follow the epic line, or do you have to do extra stuff? So for instance, there's using legendary Angmar coins to buy a title, and using that title gives you the deed. Okay, that's not going to happen by default. You have to do extra stuff for that. Cool. But as we can see, the 115 stuff that just came out, is technically not all 115, but when the level cap was increased to 115 on Anor just last week, we got 4 new deeds, and I added them to this table, but they don't have pages yet, right? There's not a lot of that is filled in yet. But that's okay. This stuff takes time. There's no automatic extraction from LOTRO into the wiki. It's done by fans. So if you like editing wikis and want to flesh those out, I encourage you to do so. Anyhow, Legend of Mirkwood. There is a deed. Use the title writ bartered from someone in some place for some amount of stuff. In fact, this is kind of the problem, right? Like there was a question mark until someone goes in there and figures it out. It may just kind of be a question mark. Now, I can't actually get there on this character. So let me do a quick switch over. Do I have something for that? Switching servers. Oh, it doesn't have me. Okay, there we go. Just so we're not staring at a blank screen, let me go ahead and switch over to Anor, where I have a character who does have the ability to go look at that vendor. Maybe. Oh. Oh, cool. It's actually playing music, I assume. Great. Neat. I very rarely am switching servers, so this was kind of something I set up a while ago. Okay, so of course it's going over to my primary monitor, and of course I play with it on my secondary monitor, so let me just turn that on over. Neat. Okay. Oh, a question in chat. Did you manually collect all deeds for your plugin? At first, I was doing some of that, right? Going to the wiki, looking at Barry's completionist tracker, a very large spreadsheet, and generally using that instead of any sort of automated method. But I did discover there's a fan out there who is doing some really interesting work looking at the data files and extracting some basic information, quest text and that, deed text and that sort of thing. And so I was able to cross-check my work with their extracted information and fix up places where the information was wrong or incomplete, like the minimum level of deeds, that kind of thing. Someone says, is there an effort from the devs to allow dumping of game data to allow creating wiki content faster? To my knowledge, there's no official, oh, holy moly. Oh, yes. So I've been making progress on Treebeard, and so this is the first time I've logged in here for a while, and I have a bunch of new titles. Thanks, level 50s. Awesome, we'll just poke that back there. Okay, so titles awarded. Disabled arms, disabled banners, bows, claws, shadows, shields. Neat, good job. And I haven't been on an ore in a while, obviously. Fantastic, we'll just clear all that out of here. Okay, so we were just gonna go off to Mirkwood. I guess the question is, what's the easiest way to get there? I assume that their staple masters don't really connect. Let's see. Oh, that's the vineyards. Okay, what goes there? Not a lot. So, Karis Gladden. That sounds great. Get to Mirkwood. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, but I'm not a hunter. If I was a hunter, I'd already be there. So, barring anything else, and because I wasn't planning ahead properly and didn't actually situate myself in Mirkwood, I'm just going to ride over to the personal housing, far-ranging stable master, who I feel like can get me on the other side of the Misty Mountains at least. Yes, Osgalad. In fact, I guess I could check my milestones and see if I have something better. Let's see, 21st Hall, that is kind of better. Lonok, Galtrev. All right. Well, if I need to, I could go to the 21st Hall, but of course, the stable master up here will do something like that also. All right, far-ranging stable masters, what do you got for me? Now, this is one of the interesting ones. There are a couple entries like the 21st Hall and Karis Gladden that just don't show up on the list if you don't have certain prerequisites. Unlike all these other ones that show up on the list, but you just can't travel there because you don't have the prereqs. And so Karis Gladden is on there, so we'll just go ahead and do that. Why not? Oops.
Greetings to you.
All right. How about vineyards? Man, it's like Mirkwood is hard to get to or something. There's got to be a better way. There's no legendary trader there. I know.
Make of Iron.
Okay. Well, this is all Valthorian. That's a great river. Let's go to the boat. I do like how this map shows that the yellow trees extend south of the river. That's nice. I like that. Oh, we just want that boat. Cool. Okay. So what are we looking for? We're looking for... Oh, my plugin manager is not knowing that I want it to load this. Okay. Give it a second to load. Now, if you are on the legendary server, well, now on the legendary servers, you can mark that a server is legendary, and that will show you any legendary deeds. Now, I think most of them, but not all of them, are under a race and social on the class race epic tab. And they are right here, legendary server deeds. There's a whole section of them towards the bottom. All right, just gonna mount up and ride over to that stable master. And the specific one we're looking for is, I think, the Legend of Mirkwood. Look at that. Use that, bartered from X in X for X. Good thing I didn't actually fix that weeks ago and forget about it. That would have been embarrassing. Now, oftentimes with legendary server deeds, because the legendary server information is so new on the wiki, I'll often make the change there first and then come in and make sure it's also there in the deed tracker. Because I do like the wiki. I love editing the wiki and making sure it's as accurate as possible. I would do way more of that if I wasn't also doing plugins. Now, conveniently, in Oskalod, the legendary Mirkwood rewards quartermaster is right next to the stable master, who looks suspiciously like Tariel, but is named Toriel, so is definitely a different person. Okay, neat. Well, if that's an homage, I like it.
In these dark days,
Cool.
we must work
So,
together or flee.
what are we doing? Legend of Mirkwood. Use title writ Legend of Mirkwood. That one bartered from something. Now, if you haven't done editing of the wiki, we're going to do a little of that right now. If I can log in. Oh my goodness. All right, let me pull that off for a second and get myself logged in on this profile. The wiki is pretty straightforward to edit. Like I said, I do encourage you to give it a try if you're at all interested in helping, even if it's just correcting a typo on a page. It's always useful. There's only so many people, and of course, every minute spent editing the wiki is a minute spent not actually playing the game that we like to play. So there's trade-offs there. But some people do a fantastic job with that. Oh, interesting. Password's not valid. I'm going to just have to load it up in a different browser here. Drop it. Okay. Cool. So, legendary server. Fantastic. Now, one of the gotchas for editing the wiki is sometimes there is embedded content. For instance, this page doesn't actually have that table of deeds. Instead, those are in the legendary server deeds page, which is being embedded here. That's fine. So we'll instead make the change here, and then it will automatically update anywhere where this is embedded. Speaking of World of Warcraft, that's some clever marketing, people. Okay, so we know there was a question mark. There we go, Legend of Mirkwood. So use the title writ bartered from. Cool. We can see that should be legendary Mirkwood rewards quartermaster in Ostgalad for, we can see that is 10 of these legendary coin of Mirkwoods. Nice. Now, there's a way to reference currency. Fortunately, we don't have to figure that out here. Usually, you can just look somewhere else. So, for instance, let's see. Okay, there's not a lot of linking going on here. Well, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, barter. Okay, they're just doing the text here. That's lovely. Okay. It's 410. In fact, I can stop doing that then. Now, even though that might be useful to have those hyperlinks there, assuming they point to something valid, I do like to be consistent when I'm just going in and editing a page. There's no point for needless differences right now. I might come back later and just do a polish where everything gets linked, but I wouldn't necessarily fold that into this edit. Cool. Added Legend of Mirkwood. Summary. All right, now we're going to go ahead and show a preview just to make sure it works. Ah, excellent. Festival. Yes, thank you, Moobot. And we can see Legend of Mirkwood. Use that barter from Legendary Mirkwood to reward Quartermaster and Oscalad for, oh, that in is wrong, for 10 Legendary Coins of Mirkwood. Good. All right, I'm satisfied with that. If you're also a cautious person like I am, the show changes will isolate just the things that you changed, and we can see here only the line that we wanted to change. Very similar to the source control that we've already been using. It'll say, this is what it was, this is what it is, that's the only change. Awesome, that's exactly what I wanted. Okay, so we can go ahead and save that change. And that'll pop up here as well. So, eventually. Okay. Now that the wiki's been updated, and like I said, I just like to keep them in sync that way. We can go ahead and come in to, now, again, one of those things where, was this a good idea or not? But there are some intermediary Excel files that I use to kind of massage data from other sources into what the deed tracker is going to do. If I was doing it over again, I might skip that, but it has proven useful. And so you're going to see what that looks like here. So we can see under race and social, we can go ahead and go up to the legendary section. And the Legend of Mirkwood has that same problem here. So we can go ahead and just update that right there. Now, some special sneaky characters have been sneaking in from the wiki, so I'm just going to strip that off. Okay, so use title writ, bartered from the Quartermaster and Oscalad for 10 legendary coins. Perfect. That's a summary, and these summaries mostly were inspired by the summaries on the tables in the wiki. They're not part of anything official, and they're only available in English, but they will show up when you hover over a deed in-game. So, for instance, this one, the summary is complete legendary Amar, Karndin, blah, 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 title, Shadowbreaker. There's an experimental feature which uses some more actively pulled information from the game. And so if you use the experimental ones, the game data-based objectives are listed instead. You can see adventure to level 15, complete that. And here are the ones we just saw, complete Karndum, Urgarth, Riften, Nurskashun. Sometimes these are great, and sometimes these are really not so much. But yeah, that's a fine, but it is still in experimental mode. So I mark it that way just so people don't click it and then are like, why are all my objectives weird? Well, because you clicked the thing. But that's okay. So line 284, we're just going to go update that. Deed info. Now, 284 is not necessarily unique. So I'm going to zoom this up a little bit and verify that we are in, oh, that's class. Okay, good to know. Let's skip to the next 284. Excellent. And we can see we're in Legend of Mirkwood. Perfect. So we're just going to replace that line. Now, are we done? We are not done. I do want to save that change. So one thing that I was very happy to get done is a localization of a lot of this stuff, not just in English, but also German and French. And so one of the things that I use for that is an automated process. So we go over to the automated process. Let's see. The Visual Studio window is opening on the other side. Now, this is something that you would not do for a normal plugin necessarily. But when you have a plugin that's dealing with thousands and thousands of deeds, it is useful sometimes to have some extra help. And so that's what's going to be going on over here. Although, it occurs to me, that all this file opening may be causing problems with the stream. Let me know. All right. Companion data parser. Okay, so we're just going to run this little utility. It loads that deed info file that I just had open. It also loads the localizations for German and French, munges them all together, spits them back out, and like I said, for 99% of plugins out there, this is not a thing that you would do. It's going to take a little bit while longer because it's competing for hard drive access with the recording. Okay, so what do we get out of that when we run that little utility? We can see that not only do we get the line change that we put in, but the German, the actual English version of that, and the French have all been changed as well. Super awesome. Okay. Now, that part's maybe a little less exciting because it's using an external tool, but it does get the job done. So we're going to go ahead and say that's good. Put that in the README deeds. And we filled in cost of legendary, or the summary for Legend of Mirkwood. Right? Legend of Mirkwood. Great. All right, then we're just going to take another snapshot. I don't think we need that. We do need to delete that. Good. Stage. And the README. Cool. And oftentimes the change in the README is just the comment I use for source control because coming up with words is hard enough as it is. Okay. A thing is done. Awesome. Do we have perhaps a more interesting one to work on? Okay. I'm going to say anything else that is like that. I'm going to move on down here. Now, this is an interesting one. I found this while I was looking for things that might be accomplishable on stream, but I don't actually know if it's still true. So, known to the townfolk, I think that's supposed to be, of the Eastfold neighborhoods. Let's go check that out. So, that is going to be a not actively available deed because it does require purchasing a mithril or housing writ house in Eastfold Hills. So let's see, there's an option here to hide the not, okay, good. Then they are visible. So under reputation, I would imagine, we have East. Cool, all right. Kindred of the townsfolk of the Eastfold neighborhoods requires purchase. Awesome. So if we go ahead and act as if we have just completed that. Okay, so here's what is going on. When a deed is completed, automatically detected or not, we do go ahead and mark off a little timestamp right there. It doesn't have to be there, but I think it's neat to be able to go back and be like, oh, I completed that a month ago, a year ago, 14 years ago. No, we can't backdate, but you know, it's neat to know some of that information. I would love a little graph that you could have in game that like shows your deed completion over time. That being said, we can see the text here is too wide. It's not being shrunk back down according to the new amount of space it has. Well, why was it so big in the first place? Well, there's a column that is used for both the timestamp and reputation, if there is any. And so what we see is that when you complete a deed, that reputation, you can't get it anymore, so we just use that field instead for the timestamp. Awesome. That works really well. And so you can see which deeds will give you reputation with a faction, but once you've completed those deeds, you just see when you completed it. Neat. Oops. Undo. What? What is going on here? That's strange. Normally, I can shift-click to unselect everything. Perhaps there's an option here. Okay. When completing, mark all prerequisite deeds complete. That should be the thing. Interesting. Well, that's just causing me more questions. Oh. Ow. That's funny. A change I made the other day has come back to haunt me. Let me see if I can drag this window on over. Okay. So what's happening is I made a change the other day to fix something completely unrelated, and it has broken this. And this is where source control comes in. So I made a change for, what was it? It was the import window. So importing would uncheck a deed. If the user manually checks it, well, the import window is open. Well, that's an edge case. I don't need to worry about that. One thing that I could do is I could go manually look at this, or we could just undo the thing. So let me come here and go ahead and stash that, my in-work stuff. And let's see if I can do that. I haven't actually tried to revert a thing recently. So let's see. Where did I go? Oh, there we go. What I would like to do is revert that. Just do the opposite. You couldn't revert it. Well, that makes me sad. Okay. We're going to just abort that then. We'll do it manually. It's fine. So even if you can't completely revert the thing, we can at least come look and see what it was. This was in the main win file. Whoa. We'll put that back. Okay. And main win is, not surprisingly, the file that controls the drawing of the main window. So we see it was in main win on lines around 648. Cool. We'll just go there and take a look. So what is going on? I really enjoyed that Hobbit. Okay, it was just a little bit below. That's presumably about why I couldn't revert that. Someone asked, are you filtering the tree view for the search? There is no search right now, but you can do a search. So for instance, if I searched for ruins, then you just come up with deeds that have ruins in them. Eastern ruins, western ruins, elf ruins, ruins of Breland, that sort of thing. Hopefully that answers your question. I didn't see it for some time. Okay, so the change that we did before, it looks like it was just untoggling whatever it was. And now we would like it to go back to doing that. So local checkbox, don't even worry about that. And let's give that a try. Let's see if that fixes our problem. Okay, so if I deselect, you asked because you never got the set filter function for Treeville working for some reason. So I do not do all of this as a proper tree view. And when I do a filter, in fact, when I do much of anything, and this is kind of a performance issue that I would like to resolve. The whole UI was, as I mentioned earlier, was based off of a plugin called Hidbolt, or some variation thereof. And it was to help you track your rebuilding of Hidbolt, both what currency you needed and which ones you had done and which ones you hadn't done. And so it did not have a 3,000 deeds to track, and so while I was adapting it, I didn't necessarily rewrite the UI from scratch the way it would have been probably better to do. So when you change a setting here, or when you change tabs, it basically throws away everything it has and recreates all the UI elements, and there's thousands of them here, which is why when I click the Ravanian button, it takes about 3 seconds for it to redraw that whole one. Now, once you're in here, it's fine, right? No problem. I can click. This is all very snappy. But moving to another view is not snappy, and I don't like that. Now, maybe from a performance perspective, I should just pre-draw them all and then just take the memory hit. I don't know. But what it means is I added a feature called hide completed deeds, because the fewer deeds it has to draw, the faster it goes. So if you've already completed a bunch of things, and I don't have a fast way to do that. Let's come into Ravanian real fast. So if you've already done Great Deeds for Lothlorien and Warriors of Lothlorien and all of this, and you've already done all of this for Moria, and you've already done this for Southern Mirkwood, then next time you come in here, it will not need to draw those things, right? You only have a few things left in Moria. Oh, that's funny. And so the more deeds you complete, the snappier this thing gets if you have that option on. So no, I'm not doing filtering in a good way. When you filter, you ask for, let's say, Slayer, it will just redraw the window, skipping anything that doesn't match the filter, right? And so that's actually not terrible for the filter, because chances are you're typing something that doesn't exist everywhere, right? If I'm just curious about spider, then there's 5. There's 5 things it has to draw plus each of the categories. That's really snappy. If you search for the letter A, less so, that kind of thing. So no, it's not a great filter, and it runs into another problem, which is if I do, let's just pull up Spider. We can see Spider Slayer and Spider Slayer Advanced, but the thing above it in a hierarchical sense is hidden because I didn't include the logic that says, oh, something underneath you is hidden, so you should be shown too, right? Because I'm not taking advantage of any pre-existing filtering mechanism. I'm having to, if I don't write it, it doesn't exist. And so that's not great. I did not realize there was a set filter on the tree view, and you are making me very curious. So let me close a few extraneous windows that I have open here. So as always, we have our ability to click on the wrong link. There we go. So as always, we have our documentation here. So if we come in to, what did you say it was? Tree view. Okay. So there is a tree view under turbine.ui. And in tree view, there's a get filter and a set filter. Nice. A filter used to filter tree items. That's fascinating. The fact that it takes an object makes me very curious what it thinks that should be. And a get filter, it returns an object. Interesting. Baz says, great explanation. Oh, thank you. The solution, for me, because filtering was redrawing. Yeah, it's not a great solution, but the fact that I was already redrawing anytime you change tabs, or if you changed which character you were looking at, because you can look at the deed progress for other characters. Since I was already had a function that was basically redraw the whole thing, making use of it for the filter was actually really trivial. right? Like the redraw just had to pay attention to this field and it was there for free. So if you click Ariador, it's still filtering on Spider, or it should be. Let's see. Oh yeah, it is. It was so fast. I'm not used to it being that fast when I click. So because I was already redrawing, this was almost free. This was like a silly easy feature to add. But it's only enabled because the whole system isn't great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was why I eventually shipped it like this. You said it's not the biggest problem in this case. Yeah, it's not a thing for in combat, and in fact, I've added a feature where you can say don't do stuff while I'm in combat, and it waits until you're out of combat, and then it does the stuff. And that's exactly right. Like, if you're not in combat, and if you're just trying to plot out your deeds, it's hopefully not time sensitive. If it takes an extra second, annoyance, but not the end of the world. Whereas if something you're using in combat, like mini raid, it has to be performant. Okay. Yeah, I'm really curious what that object is meant to be for the filter. I would assume that they would have. No, I shouldn't assume anything. That's really interesting. Does filter show up anywhere else? No. Interesting. Okay, that's I'm now very interested in that. You thought it took a function that should evaluate, but returning true false didn't get you anywhere. Maybe you did it wrong. Yeah, I mean that is a thing. Let me add that to my to-dos. Look into preview. Set filter. It may be that some other people have already posted on the forums with a sample code of how to use it, in which case that's a very easy exploration. But yeah, I'll make a note to maybe look into that, because you've got me curious as well, because I would love a better way of doing this where it could just hide and show things as opposed to having to redraw it all. That would also be good because there's a feature on the completion window where you can say, show me the thing, and if the thing is hidden, it doesn't show it, which isn't great. I said show. Oh, it can't scroll down, can it? Okay. Oh, that's another thing. Show in tracker button should not redraw if already on the correct tab. There we go. We're just finding all sorts of things that we can improve. Okay, so that was a long diversion to what's going on here, which is we want to pay attention. Now, this is actually really important, is when you have redrawn this listing, it does pay attention to the width here. It just doesn't pay attention to it right as you complete the thing. So if I were to, oh, but uncompleting it redraws. Oh, that should make this easier. Excellent. Let's go take a look at this. Now, this is happening in the main window. So let's go take a look at main win and see what we can see. So we can see we're getting a thing when we click. So we deselect, the thing redraws. That's great. So, and then we can force it to recalculate there. There is a checked function. And the UI is one of those things where I've been wanting to redo how it does for a while, except it's exactly what Baz is saying in chat there. It's never been a big enough problem, right? Like, this is a large effort that will take many hours to do, and I will probably mess up many things along the way. And the end result, if everything is good, it will just be a slightly, it'll be a little bit more performant and it'll be easier to maintain going forward. But there's not going to be any huge changes. It's just going to be do the same thing but better. In some ways, I feel like it's when people ask the devs about a stat squish, I don't know a lot about a stat squish. As far as I can tell, it takes the existing system makes all the numbers smaller, so instead of having 2 million hit points, you only have 20,000 or something. But as far as I can tell, the mark of a well-executed stat squish is nothing changes about the gameplay. It's only a visual change in the numbers. If it took you 5 seconds to kill a spider before, it still takes you 5 seconds. If a troll could kill you in 10 seconds before, it can still kill you in 10 seconds. As far as I can tell, a stat squish is a cosmetic change, and if you've done it well, nothing about the gameplay changes. Correct me in the chat if I've got that wrong, but that's my understanding of a stat squish. And so it's one of those things where the developers could spend literally thousands of developer hours implementing a stat squish, and if they've done it right, gameplay would change not at all. And you can tell why they kind of prefer to keep adding things that change gameplay and make it better, hopefully. Anyhow, so we have a large function here called refresh deed view. And in this deed view, we have nested functions where we are going to be drawing all of the things here. So for each of these page tabs, so we're on class race epic. So we have class, race, and social epic and reputation. For each of those, we're going to be doing stuff. And underneath that, for each of those, we're going to be doing an entry for each deed. And underneath that, we are going to be doing a checkbox for over here. And so it's not the most friendly thing ever, but it kind of flows from the same structure of the deed log. Okay, so we have a function here, check changed. And we have it's either completed or it's not completed. And we saw that if it's not completed, then we're redrawing the width of that label. Awesome. And we're not doing that if the deed was completed. So complete the deed, not right, but uncompleting a deed that was resized, and it takes advantage of that. Okay. Let's see if we can figure out where that's happening. Now, there's a function, probably, being called setWidth. Now, that function is being called in a lot of places, but let's see where we can see. Or set size. There we go. Oh, okay. So set faction or completion time. That sounds like an amazing function. And we can see in the set faction or completion time that we're going to give the deed more space if there is no faction and the deed is not completed. Perfect. This is the function that we need and is not being called where we want it. So we can see, okay, it is being called all the time when the check is changed. That's interesting. So what's going on in that function where it's not being used properly? That's the real question. So if it's completed, yes, we are, well, we're not setting the size, are we? No. Well, that's interesting. Why aren't we setting the size? We're setting it when it's completed. Maybe we just never did? Okay, so we need to know what the label should have been. If we were clever, we'd have some sort of variable we could go to look at. But for right now, we're just going to look at the original here. So just scrolling on back. We're in the wrong place. Okay, so in the giant refresh function, in the nested loop, right here, we're using that deed name. What are we using it for? We should be making a label. Okay. So we definitely have stuff. Oh, there we go. Label deed name. Deed label width. That's a good thing. Do we know what that's supposed to be? Oh, yes. Okay. So we are adjusting the size of that label based on this. And we don't need to calculate that more than once. So label deed name default width, or no, uncompleted width equals, and we're just going to save that off. And that's something you can do with Lua. You can just arbitrarily assign save data in an object. You don't have to have pre-declared the structure like you might have to in more declarative languages like C# or C++. You can just say, hey, save that off. Now, that is useful to me because I don't want to have to recalculate that. I don't even know if I have that information available. So, down below, faction, set faction or completion time. That's not the right one, is it? No, maybe it is. Okay. So we can go ahead and say deed name label. If it's completed, is that right? I may not have saved off the right thing, but we're gonna give it a try. Set width, and then deed name label. May need to save something else off instead. Let's take a look. Let's see if we're anywhere close here. Oh, looks like it might still be loading. Why, oh why am I getting a spinning circle? Always makes me a little nervous when I've just made a plugin change and then I get a spinning circle. It's not common, but it is possible to cause the LOTRO client to crash if you do something wrong in a plugin. Not any detrimental way to your system. It just causes the LOTRO client to shut down. And then, that tells you as a developer that you did something wrong. Okay. Oh, cool. So we can see here that the width is correctly set, but the height didn't get adjusted. And this is a fun thing with LOTRO labels, is they know how to wrap, but they don't know how to auto-adjust themselves up and down. That's okay. We have a function called autoFit label height. And we can just go ahead and first set the width to be the way we want it, and then go ahead and set the height. And 50 is a fine maximum for this purpose. Let's give that a try. Let's go ahead and reload that plugin. Maybe give a few extra seconds after reloading before we start clicking buttons. Okay. And go ahead and finish that. Ah, that's so close to what I want it to be. Okay, so we're still not seeing the adjustment of the height, and that's okay. What it might help to do, though, is, so we're going to go ahead and cut that out for a moment and maybe save it in our back pocket over here. Let's see. So we can set the width here. That's fine. What about... Is it already trying to adjust it somewhere else? Where is this getting called? This is getting called right after. Okay, so this is right after we create that reputation and also during the checking of it. Awesome. So we do have the label deed name. Is anything else interesting happening to it? It is not. Okay, that's good to know. Let's see. So the problem might more be that the label is itself in something else. So this label deed name is in a control that is representing that row. So if we come back to where it's being created, we can go ahead and see that its parent is creatively named the current child node. And one of these days I need to come back and clean up some of these. But the real question is that going into that function where we can make use of it? And the answer is no. And that's okay. But it does mean this right here, this code where we autofit the label height and then we change the node, we need to emulate that when we're clicking these boxes. Now, can we just copy paste this? Maybe, because we know we should have that, and we can set size, and the width is fine, and the data that's good. Yeah, sure, let's do that. And the other thing is we do want to go ahead and make sure the width is good. In fact, set width here of 500, and then we'll go ahead and pull in that one and go ahead and auto fit that. So either way, we're going to auto fit the DNAME label to no more than 50 tall. Now, is it going to work? I do not know. But that is one of the magic things about source control, is if it doesn't work, we're just going to undo it. Okay, well, that's really interesting. It's not what I would call correct. Now, it is doing some nice vertical spacing, but that vertical spacing isn't super, I wouldn't think. Because normally these, and let me go ahead and reload here. These are normally squished a little bit more vertically. Now that's not great if you have trouble reading the text, which is not very large anyway, but there's so many deeds to display, right? There's so many deeds that if you double the space or even do 1.5 times the space, it gets really tall really fast. So what I would like to know is, am I doing something wrong with the auto fit? Is that a minimum? Well, let's find out. Where is that declared? Well, we should be a little bit more specific. Function. Good. It's declared here. That's supposed to be a max height. I'm not sure I believe that. And if it's not giving the results that we want, then let's go ahead and try the 20 that we know it already was. And that's just in pixels. No. Okay. So whatever is going on in that function, it is not really respecting our max height. Is that because... So this autofit label height is inspired by someone else's code. You slap a scroll bar on there, you see if the scroll bar is visible. If it is visible, then the thing's not tall enough and you make it more tall. There are probably better ways to do this. If nothing else, there's binary searches that you could do. This just keeps making it bigger until it's big enough. But something's not going right in it, obviously, because this is not how it used to look. We'll put it that way. Okay, so if we don't do the autofit height, which isn't behaving correctly, do we at least get everything else that we want? That would be progress. This is where I really like bugs that don't have anything to do with the user interface, because user interfaces are hard. Oh. You know, I'd say that's it, except when it wraps like that, we're still not right. But it's wrapping. It is doing the wrapping. If we come back here, it's unwrapping now. So the only thing that's wrong, this is progress, The only thing that's wrong is the height isn't changing right there. Everything else is good. I actually think that's enough progress that I might take a look and see what we've got and see if it's worth making something. Oh, yep, there's that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hold off on staging that. We've got this, where we're setting the width. In fact, I want to see a little bit more context. And so I'm going to pull up my handy-dandy text comparison tool beyond compare. This one is, yep, in the set faction, we're setting the width. Oh, interesting. So by not setting the height explicitly, just setting the width, that might be an important part of the change. And we're setting the width there. Okay. And then we're using that there, so that's good. The real question is, what's going on here? So because the height's not getting bigger, if we did that, what would happen if we just said the height gets bigger if it is completed? Because we're trying to change the height of that row, or at least the code seems to be doing that. Oh, that's terrible. But it's not wrong. Oh, that's delightful. I wouldn't say it's wrong, but it's not great. All right, so you've got me curious. What if the autofit just happened during completion, which is the main thing, right? Most people aren't uncompleting their deeds. They're just completing their deeds. So the real question is, does it look friendly when someone hits the complete button? If it doesn't look friendly when they uncomplete it, that's fine, because as soon as they click away, we're going to redraw anyway. As we mentioned, it does have some benefits. No, that's... Oh, it did get bigger, but the row's bigger, but not the box it's in. Okay. That is something we can work with, because this is just a thing that happens with a lot of LOTRO UI components. They don't auto-size. You're responsible for that. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you do need to be aware of it. So let's see. CurChild node is itself parented by something. It is going to be the parent of a bunch of other things. Yes. Okay, so it is deeds in tab nodes. Oh, that's delightful. Okay, so what is the height of that thing then? All right, so that's a tree view. Let's go back to our trusty documentation. All right, so we have a UI, we have a tree view. Oops. We have a function that we're using called getNodes. So that gets the root nodes in the tree view control. Great. And the tree view itself is, in fact, a tree view. That's good. The real question is, there's just one tree view here per? Is that what we're doing? We're probably just doing that. Okay. So if we do a search tree view, then that one, its size is the node width and node height. Interesting. Its own child reviews, user control, user associate. Interesting. Yeah, there is an option, if you haven't seen it, for, let's see, show each tab's content in its own scrolled area. this was, again, a holdover from the hid bolt. And so what it means is you can scroll each one of these, and that can also make it a little bit easier to figure out what are the UI components that are going on here. So we know that each of those is going into here. So the real question is, what's going on with that size? So let's see. Okay, so we can see the node is getting its height set. Okay. So that's where the container is probably getting touched right there. So because we just want to adjust the height, if we save off the height before we do the adjustment and after the adjustment of the row, we'll know how much the container of rows might need to change. Maybe. Let's give that a try. All right, so if we search again for east, reputation, great. Oh, that's delightful. Okay. Because we still have that option about the scroll bars. What if we get rid of that? Show each tab's content in its own scroll bar. Yes, okay. That's exactly what we needed. So if we come back here, reset, undo, 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 that's okay. We know that looks a little weird, but if we're in here and we click it, no, it's that scroll bar is really the thing that was saving us. Because if that was in a scroll bar, okay, so we're obviously not increasing it as much as we would like to right here. Oh, hey, thank you for putting that rating in there. I'm going to do a little debug output here and figure out what's going on. Oops. What's changing here? Old height, new height, and we'll just grab those, old height and new height, because I thought those were probably going to be the correct value, and it's definitely getting bigger and smaller, but it's not scaling up as much as it needs to, and that's why the scroll bar is coming into play here. So we can see it thinks it got bigger by 10. That's awesome. But what's not happening is the thing that is in getting bigger by that much. And if we undo the scroll and then come back in just to be sure, we can see that it is getting bigger, but it's pushing that off. So if we did something silly, right, like by doubling the height difference here, ideally that shows us that it would be too much, but it would be maybe a little bit more keeping these things here. All right, so come back. No, okay. So whatever we're doing, it's not making it big enough. It's pushing the next one down, definitely. but some part of that visibility is not happening. Well, that's good to know, right? And we already know it's related to that scroll bar. Well, I was hoping to find the magical solution to this before it got too late. So we'll see if I can wrap this up in just a couple of minutes here. Okay, so we definitely have that. Okay, give the tree view a scroll bar. That sounds great. Where is that going? That parent is the tree node. The tree node is that what we're changing the height of? One of the things here that can be a little bit useful is stepping back and saying, are we changing the right thing? So for instance, if we went ahead and just said, instead of changing anything, what if instead we said, cur child node set back color turbine UI.color orange. And same thing, what if we said deb tab tree node set back color turbine.ui.color yellow. Now, I warn you, if I've spelled everything correctly, this could look hideous. Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, so we can see that I should have said dark. We'll just say dark blue, because that's just going to make my eyes hurt if I look at that. This plugin is rated U for ugly. Okay, so we can see two things. We're seeing the height here in orange. That's the cur child node. That's the thing that didn't get bigger, and we want it to get bigger to have that extra space. And we can see the deed tab tree node. We can see how big that is. So now that we have that, let's come back in and go ahead and make the the row that we're calling the current node. Let's go ahead and make that taller, or try to, and see if we can see a difference there in the color. Okay, check that. Cool, okay. So it got taller, and it got as tall as it needed for that label. That's cool. But we can see, absolutely, stuff is pushing off the bottom. And if we come back in, turn on the each tab's scroll bar, and let's go ahead and get rid of all those checks. Come back in, come back in. Okay. So if I check that, we can see the scroll bar says that that thing is big enough. It's just the other thing isn't. Okay, so we know that that is the deed tab tree node. We know that for two reasons. One, that's the thing that we set was blue. And the other, we should be able to see a scroll bar. We can see if we are doing the scroll bars, then we have set that parent. Awesome. So, can we make it taller? Is that something that is possible, or is the tree view itself thwarting us? So D tab, tree node, set height, and then, well, let's just say like 200. Let's see what happens. Hopefully 200 big enough. Okay, so we click this. Oh, well, that's interesting. What is that under? Now, the scroll bar itself is another example of LOTRO UI elements not resizing themselves. You're responsible for resizing your own scroll bar. In fact, we could do that. We could, when you're responding to a window resizing, you can come in and say, where are we? Scroll bar set size equal to whatever. In fact, oh, but that's the height of the tree view. Okay. Is that not big enough? Maybe that's not big enough. Layers upon layers. Okay, so let's come on in here. And same thing, actually. Let's just go ahead and set that back color. We need a different clashing color. Let's see, turbine.ui.color. Dark red? Orange is already dark, or light brown. Sure, dark red. Let's try that. And we're going to go ahead and deselect that for right now. And reload. Beth says, I love this falling down to the rabbit hole of UI problems. I love asterisk it too, right? Like I find it really interesting, and the techniques one can use are really interesting. And at the same time, I am very happy working on programs that don't have any user interface whatsoever. So take that as you will. Okay, we can see that the red area is not nearly as tall as the blue area, which means we could try an experiment. Let's go ahead and set the height of that also and see if that allows us to see text that is slipping underneath this blue area here, but is still in the red area. So we've gone ahead, we're just hard coding 200 at this point. Once we know what to make bigger, we'll worry about how much bigger to make it. Okay, I forgot to resize those things. Oh my goodness, that is very visible. Okay, so if we click that, oh, yes, we can see text. Okay, so we have isolated all the UI elements that were not big enough or were not being rescaled properly. Now, is the scroll bar still there? Show each one in its own scroll. Now, let's see if we can replicate the effect without the scroll bar, because the scroll bar was saving us. Oh yes, that's lovely. Okay, so we now have the three elements we know we need to make bigger. We know we need to make the row bigger, and we know we need to make this node bigger, and the tree view that the node is in. And if any of those isn't made bigger, then the label goes outside of the drawing area, and it draws, but you can't see it. It's been truncated. So that's cool. Now we might actually be able to get away with this calculation we were doing before, right? So if we comment out, bring this back over, maybe hide some of that coloring. If we comment out the hard-coded values and we come back to recalculating the difference. So we had the old one, we get the new height, and then local height delta equals new height minus old height. We'll just give that a name because we're going to use it twice. Now, here, instead of setting these to what they were doing here, hard-coded, we can just go ahead and come in and say deed tab tree node get height plus height delta. And we can do the same thing with the tree view. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. We'll keep the colors for right now just to make sure things are doing what they're doing, and then we're going to get rid of them real fast. That is something. Okay, so click that. Awesome, everything is still in view. Everything's still visible. Oh, yes, beautiful, love it. So now we can kill the colorings that we're doing here. But not if I press the wrong key. Okay, so we can see here that we're getting the effect that we want. Now, when we uncheck, it's not shrinking it back up, but we can see now what it would take to do that. Shrinking not only the row, but also the tree node and also the tree view if we want everything to behave properly. Now that's doable actually, but let's focus on one thing at a time. So we're going to clean up some of those extra things that we just did and then come back into source control and see what else has crept in. Oh, yeah, a couple of things it looks like. Okay, so we still had those auto fits there. That's probably not where we want that actually. Now that we have the resizing, we're going to need to go ahead and come into the set faction or completion time. And that auto fit here, we need to extract that out because we need to do a couple of them, and we're going to want to do that same thing probably. So let's come back up. And let's see. If we do it here, well, I guess we don't need to do it there. It might make more sense not to, but let's see what it's like to hoist that out and do it all the time. Earlier we were seeing that wasn't good because it spaced everything out. I think it's still going to be. Well, I thought it was still going to be doing that, but this doesn't look half bad. Let's come on over to hobbies, where almost nothing needs to be done. Oh, it's not bad. That's about as close as it can get. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy with that part. But if we're just looking at these, is it actually doing the thing? Is it getting bigger and smaller? No, it's not getting smaller yet, but that's not bad. We have definitely made progress. Come back in, everything's reset. Great. Okay, we can definitely run with that for right now. Okay, so we had the fixing the width. Don't explicitly do the height, and save the width as a part of what's going on here. And then finally, the resizing here. All of that is great. Now, what were we attempting to do? What was the goal here? The goal, let's go ahead and hide that, was fixing the problem here. And it was specifically about completing a deed. We're a deed tracker. We're not so concerned about uncompleting deeds. So we definitely fixed that. So that was a UI issue. Completing a deed that's extra long does not resize. Completing a deed that's extra long. Result is extra long is now more readable. Yeah, good enough. Now, when completing, if it is extra long, the text no longer goes over the timestamp. That's a little bit more specific, and it means that if I'm looking at this in 6 months, I don't have to say, what was I doing with that? It's a little bit more obvious. Great. To-dos, we'll go ahead and save all that too. And here we go. This one change was reverting that other issue. I will commit that separately. And then, what do we have? Well, that's it. Awesome. Now this one, we need to actually unmark one of the things in the README, which was completing, importing, import. Yeah, well, that bug fix is not as important as this other thing. So we're going to undo that. Oops. Okay. Reverted change to fix cascade checking, unchecking issue. there's probably a better way to fix it so that both of them are okay, but not tonight. Cool. Well, I thank you all for your indulgence and letting me make some work on the deed tracker plugin instead of going out and looking at all the wide world of plugins and seeing if we can improve them. This one, I've been meaning to push out an update to the deed tracker for a while now. We've got the difficulty deeds, we've got new legendary server 115 deeds, and this just gets us that much closer. I think this is a great time to break for the evening. So while I close some windows here, if you've got any last minute comments, suggestions, chat ideas, whatever, throw them into chat, and then we'll see if they're a tonight thing or a next time thing. Okay, let me close that, and that, and that, and that, and that. We don't need that anymore. We don't need that. So many windows. Okay. Excellent. I think I've caught up with all my windows ballooning out. Oh, that's much better. I like that. Okay. Ah, excellent. Little Redhead says, this stream will be saved here on the LOTRO stream channel, as well as cross-posted on the Life Beyond the Shire YouTube page. And if I think there's useful things, a corresponding blog post on the website. Well, I've got that thought in my head. Let me go ahead and pull up the Life Beyond the Shire webpage, where you can find blog posts. So for posts that were exploring specific concepts in plugin development, you can find sort of a deep dive without all the sidetracking that we get into live, with what it looks like to do some of those code changes. Now, as we've kind of diverged from basic plugin development to looking at specific plugins over the last couple of weeks, I have been a little bit less dedicated about doing these because we've just been doing more off-the-cuff explorations of, oh, there's a problem with this, let's look at it. So if any of you think that it'd be useful to try to capture some of this information from the stream in a blog post like this, let me know. But in the meantime, there's definitely, the video goes up on YouTube, and there it gets time-stamped. So for instance, if we take a look at the one from last week, in the description, you can find timestamps of where we kind of cover basic topics. So you can just jump straight there. You don't have to watch the whole thing to go see, oh, what is it like to upload the patch, or let's talk about screenshots in game, that kind of thing. I think Twitch lets you have descriptions like that on a video, but I actually haven't figured out how that works yet. So for now, the YouTube ones will definitely have it. All right. Well, from Ostgalad in Mirkwood, I think this is a good time to call it for the evening. Okay. Fantastic. Yes, thank you so much for being here, and don't forget to check out other people who are coming on tomorrow. The Redhead has put a link in there. Looks like we have 3 streamers scheduled tomorrow. Well, thanks for joining us, Baz. If you are interested, since this is your first time, if you're interested in catching up on some of the other topics, do check out the VODs or on YouTube, but feel free to just catch up live and come back next week. I'm here each Tuesday from, I think it's 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're in Central European time, so I have to do the mental math there. And yeah, we just explore plugins. You say good that someone is shining some light on LOTRO plugin making. I think so too. I figured I was going to be mucking with plugins anyway. Maybe there'd be some people who would be interested to see that was like, just out of curiosity, or it might inspire them to work on plugins in general, whether they're for LOTRO, maybe for another game. I know at least one person was talking about getting inspired to do plugins for Factorio, which is fantastic, and apparently also in Lua. So there is some cross-pollination there. Awesome. Well, thanks for being in chat. Thanks for putting messages and communicating. You say it's extremely hard to find much on it, especially with all the weirdness. Yeah, that was my goal. Was if you're looking to do plugin development, it shouldn't feel scary. It shouldn't feel like there's a huge obstacle. You can do some really interesting things with some really basic tools. Well, I shouldn't say basic, but with hopefully understandable tools. Given a little bit of guidance, and hopefully that's why I'm here. I don't want to bring myself off as an expert. I know enough to be dangerous, and I'm willing to try things out and see what happens, and that makes a lot of difference because it is important to remember when you're doing a plugin, you can't really damage anything. The worst case, a blue moon, really random chance, you might cause your LOTRO client to quit. But you haven't damaged anything. You just bring it back up, you change the code, you try it again. And so that's what's really great about the sandboxed environment within LOTRO is you can try whatever you want to do, and it works or it doesn't work. And there's no harm if it doesn't work. Awesome. Yeah, Green Eyed Gamer says, woo, Factorial love. I have heard enough about Factorial that I think it's just as well that I stick to my LOTRO obsession and not also have a Factorial obsession. That does not seem like a good use of my very limited time right now, but it looks fantastic from some of the little videos and screenshots that I've seen of it. Cool. All right. Well, that's all we're going to cover today. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you all next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right.